At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
The year is 2019, right? And a mid-level manager at a Fortune 500 tech company has a pretty massive choice to make.
Yeah, a real career-defining moment, honestly.
Exactly. So she can either uphold strict corporate policy, or she can secretly manipulate the budget to give her absolute top performer, a woman of color, an 8% raise that she just desperately deserves.
Because she'd been passed over, right?
Yeah, systematically passed over for promotions.
Okay.
And when this manager went to HR and senior leadership to fix it, she hit that classic corporate wall. You know the one?
Oh, I know it. The old, budget constraints excuse.
That's the one. So the manager actually chooses the raise. She goes rogue.
Wow.
Yeah, she covertly reclassifies the employee's role just to unlock these discretionary funds. But eventually she gets caught.
Of course she does. They always leave a paper trail.
Right. So she faces formal discipline. But the crazy thing is, her team totally rallies around her. They openly call her covert rule-breaking, the most ethical thing anyone had done in that organization.
I mean, that is just such a powerful statement.
It really is. And welcome to our deep dive for today. If you are that intellectually curious learner who loves figuring out the hidden dynamics of the modern workplace, you are in the exact right place.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, our mission is to explore a truly fascinating academic paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's titled The Ethics of Managerial Robin Hoodism When Leaders Take Justice into Their Own Hands.
It's a great paper.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, it's a story that perfectly isolates the core paradox we are looking at today because on paper, according to the strict bylaws of the organization,
She broke the rules.
yeah, she committed a clear violation. She essentially misappropriated corporate funds.
Right.
But in the eyes of the people on the ground, the people doing the actual work, she upheld a much deeper, more fundamental moral principle of fairness.
Which is so interesting because, like, if you map out an organizational chart, it usually looks like this sleek, perfectly ordered grid, right?
Absolutely. It implies that justice and rules just flow evenly from the top down, everything in its right place.
Yeah, but Robin Hoodism completely fractures that grid.
It really does. It exposes that massive tension between formal corporate compliance and, well, actual human dignity.
That tension is exactly why we're talking about this today.
Mhm.
So, for you listening right now, have you ever witnessed a boss bend the rules to help someone who was getting a raw deal?
I'm sure a lot of people are nodding their heads right now.
Right, maybe they slipped someone extra time off or, found some weird loophole to get an expense approved.
It happens all the time.
So today, we are going to explore the psychological mechanisms behind why managers do this, the secret devastating toll it takes on them, and how companies can actually fix the root of the problem.
Instead of just punishing the behavior, which is what they usually do.
Exactly. So to really understand that tech managers' actions, we first have to draw a hard line, right, between true Robin Hoodism and everyday corruption.
Or even just like playing favorites.
Yeah.
The research lays out 5 very strict criteria for this.
Okay, lay them on me.
First, the action must be unauthorized.
Meaning no permission from the boss.
Right. The manager is acting without explicit permission from above. That unauthorized nature is the whole point. It's what creates the ethical friction in the first place.
Makes sense. What's number 2?
Second, it requires actual resource redistribution. We are talking about tangible value here.
So like money.
Money, paid time off, access to proprietary equipment, just offering a shoulder to cry on or, emotional support that doesn't qualify.
Okay, so there has to be real skin in the game. They're moving physical or financial assets around.
Precisely. You have to actually move the needle. Third, the intent must be compensatory.
Meaning they're compensating for something specific?
Yeah. The manager isn't just randomly handing out perks because they're in a good mood. They are actively trying to offset a specific perceived injustice.
Okay. That ties into the 4th one, right?
Exactly. Fourth, It has to be a response to an organizational injustice. This is vital.
So it's not about an employee who's just having a run of bad personal luck outside of work.
No, not at all. It is a direct response to a failure of the organization's own policies or its leadership.
They are reacting to the company's own broken promises, basically.
Nailed it. And that leads to the fifth and arguably the most crucial psychological piece.
The deontic motive.
Yes. It must be driven by a deontic motive.
Deontic. That's quite a heavy philosophical term.
It is a bit jargon heavy, yeah.
Let's break that down for everyone. Essentially, we're talking about acting out of a profound sense of moral duty, right?
Right.
They do it simply because it is the categorically right thing to do, regardless of the consequences. And crucially, without any personal gain.
That lack of personal gain is huge. That's what separates the Robin Hoods from the empire builders and middle management.
Yeah, the people just trying to look good.
Exactly. They aren't trying to curry favor to build a loyal faction, and they certainly aren't trying to look good to their superiors since, they literally have to hide the action.
Right. You can't brag about secret rule breaking.
Exactly. They are morally compelled to act because the system's failure violates their own internal ethical compass.
Well, let me push back on this a little bit just to make sure the boundaries are crystal clear for our listeners.
Sure, go for it.
Because human motivation is messy, right? What is the actual functional difference between Robin Hoodism and, say, nepotism?
That's a really fair question.
Because I could easily see a manager claiming they're doing a good deed by hooking up their friend with a cushy schedule and then justifying it to themselves as balancing some invisible scale.
People do rationalize things, yeah.
So we're saying it's not taking from the corporate treasury to buy drinks for your buddies. It's taking from the discretionary budget to manually recalibrate a broken corporate scale.
Oh, that manual recalibration, that is the perfect way to look at it. Yeah. What's fascinating here is that these actions are an implicit challenge to the organization itself. It's a protest.
A silent protest.
Exactly. We see this happen most frequently in environments suffering from what researchers call a value practice gap.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Think of a company that loudly preaches diversity, equity, or employee well-being in all its glossy marketing materials.
Oh, right. The billboards and the LinkedIn posts.
Yeah, all that. But then they completely fail to fund those initiatives or support them in daily operations.
So the practice doesn't match the value.
Exactly. Morally mature managers see that hypocrisy. They see the gap between the stated values and the actual practices, and they feel personally responsible for bridging it.
Even if they have to use unauthorized means to do so.
Right. They feel like they have no other choice.
Okay, so if this is about bridging that gap and fixing a broken scale, just how common is this covert rule breaking?
You'd be surprised.
Because you'd assume, given the risks of getting fired, that this is a super rare extreme measure. But the data from the source material is honestly staggering.
It really is.
Between 40 to 60% of middle managers admit to engaging in at least minor forms of Robin Hoodism.
And that's just the ones who admit it.
Right. Keep in mind, that is just the percentage of people willing to confess to unauthorized behavior on a survey. The true number is inevitably higher.
It reveals that this isn't some rare anomaly. It's actually a structural feature of modern management.
Which is wild to think about.
The researchers actually analyzed 139 highly detailed incidents of this behavior to figure out what was pulling the trigger.
And what did they find?
Well, the breakdown of those triggers tells a profound story about where corporate America is failing its people.
I really want to linger on these statistics because they are incredibly telling.
Go for it.
A massive 38% of these incidents were triggered by discrimination or identity-based marginalization.
38%.
Yeah. We are not talking about someone being slightly annoyed about a parking spot here. We are talking about underrepresented groups facing systematic disadvantages.
Just like the tech manager's employee in our opening story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another 27% were triggered by procedural injustices.
Right.
Imagine an employee being unfairly denied family leave because of some rigid, unfeeling bureaucratic technicality.
It happens all the time. And then there's the last big chunk.
Yeah, 23% were driven by a profound lack of recognition or respect from senior leaders.
And when we examine the loot, what these managers are actually smuggling to their employees, it maps perfectly onto those deficits.
What are they taking, mostly?
Well, instead of listing raw percentages, look at the categories. The most common form of redistribution is time.
Time, like days off.
Yeah, managers secretly grant unauthorized paid time off or allow these phantom flexible hours where the person is technically off the clock but getting paid.
Wow. Okay, what's next?
The second largest category is financial. So, sneaking through raises disguised as role reclassifications or approving borderline expense reimbursements.
Just finding extra money in the couch cushions of the budget.
Exactly. And the final major category is access.
Access to what?
Giving a marginalized employee unauthorized visibility to senior leadership, maybe? Or handing over expensive equipment they were formally denied.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the manager has to hide this redistribution from senior leadership.
Yeah. Secrecy is key.
So they inevitably have to swear the employee to secrecy. The researchers call this creating conspiracies of justice.
It's a great term.
Think about the psychological weight of that for a second. Imagine you, the listener, are called into your boss's office.
Okay, picture this.
They know you got completely screwed over on your annual bonus.
Yeah.
Because of some flawed algorithm. So they look around, close the door, and say, take the next week off fully paid, and don't log it in the system. Just don't tell anyone.
That's a heavy secret to hold.
Right. How would that make you feel? Validated, terrified, both.
It creates an incredibly complex and honestly often toxic interpersonal dynamic.
Because now you're an accomplice.
Exactly. The employee feels seen and supported, sure, but they are now a co-conspirator. And it gets even more complicated when we consider the coworkers who inevitably find out.
Because secrets like that rarely stay secret in an office.
Never. Someone always notices you've been gone for a week. The research shows that third-party observers, the rest of the team, judge the manager's ethics based on two competing psychological frameworks.
Right. Because not everyone sees a hero when rules get broken.
Precisely. The first framework is moral outrage.
Okay.
If the coworkers genuinely recognize the original injustice and feel angry about it themselves, they generally view the manager's rogue actions as highly ethical.
So they cheer for the Robin Hood figure.
They do. But the second framework is totally different. It's rooted in a rule-following orientation.
The sticklers for the rules.
Yeah, there's a significant portion of the workforce that believes procedures and hierarchy must be respected above all else. Because rules are what keep chaos at bay.
I mean, I get that perspective too.
Sure, for these employees, even if they agree the original situation was deeply unfair, they see the manager's rule-breaking as a profound threat to order.
Huh.
So they judge the manager negatively, which introduces massive interpersonal friction and resentment into the team dynamics.
Which brings us to a really critical turning point in our deep dive.
Let's hear it.
If the manager's motives are pure, right, and the employee gets the fairness they deserve, and at least some of the coworkers approve, what is the actual harm?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why should managers just do this whenever the corporate system fails? Why is Robin Hood a problem?
That is the ultimate question about the hidden costs of good intentions. It really comes down to two major organizational failures.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is governance fragmentation.
Governance fragmentation.
Yeah. When managers decide to create parallel, informal justice systems based on their own moral compass, they introduce massive inconsistencies across the company.
So it's not equal everywhere.
Right. One team gets a morally courageous manager who bends the rules to ensure fairness. But the team right next door doing the exact same work, they might have a manager who rigidly follows the flawed corporate policy.
Oh, wow. So you haven't actually solved inequality.
Not at all. You have just localized it. You've created a brand new, totally unpredictable lottery of fairness based entirely on who your boss happens to be.
I think about it like fixing a leaky pipe in your apartment with duct tape.
That's a great analogy.
It stops the flood for you today, so you feel like a hero. But because the water stopped, the landlord never learns that the building's plumbing is fundamentally faulty.
That is exactly it. And when that landlord stays blind to the plumbing issue, organizations fall into what researchers term information asymmetry.
Information asymmetry, meaning the top doesn't know what the bottom's doing.
Right. This is the second and perhaps most dangerous organizational cost. If a manager fixes a broken compensation algorithm or a biased promotion track in secret, senior leadership never receives the data that their system is broken.
They're totally oblivious.
Yes. The organization is completely prevented from learning, adapting, and evolving. You cannot fix a systemic justice problem if the executives in charge are looking at dashboards that say everything is running smoothly.
But beyond the organizational mechanics, We really cannot ignore the human toll this takes.
It's heavy.
It's not a victimless crime, not even for the people being helped. Beneficiaries might feel validated by their manager's allyship in the moment, but the research points out they also experience chronic fear of discovery.
Constantly looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, they carry the stigma of complicity. There's this nagging psychological doubt, like, what if they get found out?
Right.
Does it look like they couldn't succeed on their own merits? Does it delegitimize their actual hard work?
And for the managers, the psychological burden is immense and often unsustainable. The researchers refer to this as dirty work strain.
Dirty work strain. Because they're doing the dirty work the company won't do.
Exactly. These managers are risking their reputations, their upward mobility, and formal discipline. But even if they never get caught, they suffer from what psychologists classify as moral injury.
Moral injury? How is that different from just like regular burnout?
Well, burnout is mostly about exhaustion. You work too hard, you get tired. But moral injury is a trauma response to violating your own deeply held moral beliefs.
Oh, I see.
Or feeling forced to be complicit in a system that violates them. Carrying the secret of a policy violation, balancing those dual identities of a loyal corporate servant and a rogue justice warrior, it slowly erodes a person's mental well-being.
Man. So we are stuck in this brutal paradox.
They really are.
Secret Robin Hoodism actively hurts organizational governance and causes deep psychological stress for everyone involved.
Yes.
But we also can't just tell managers to shut down their empathy, enforce unjust rules blindly, and ignore the very real harm being done to their teams.
That's just a recipe for a toxic culture.
Exactly. So how do organizations stop the secrecy without ignoring the injustices that cause it?
It's a tough balance.
If secrecy is the poison, then transparency has to be the antidote, right? Let's look at how the source material suggests upgrading the corporate operating system.
We have some great real-world examples.
Yeah, starting with how a company like Kroger tackled this. They didn't just tell managers to speak up. They audited their entire system.
Kroger provides an absolute masterclass in proactively destroying the need for Robin Hoodism.
What did they do?
They didn't wait around for middle managers to start sneaking raises to people. They actively sought out their own blind spots by conducting aggressive internal equity audits.
Oh, wow. They went looking for trouble.
And they found it. They found a real systemic issue, a clear gender pay gap, where female store managers were making less than male counterparts with equivalent performance and tenure.
A huge problem.
But the crucial part is what happened next. Instead of making corporate excuses, hiding behind budget constraints, or forcing local managers to quietly tweak bonuses to make up for it,
What did they do?
Kroger spent millions of dollars to comprehensively fix the gap across the board. They remediated the issue openly and systemically.
They replaced the faulty plumbing so the managers didn't have to stockpile duct tape.
Perfect way to put it.
Another incredible mechanism the paper highlights is Microsoft's executive escalation.
Oh, this is a brilliant one.
They realize that bureaucracy is slow and injustice feels urgent.
Right.
So they created a formal, protected process where managers can rapidly bypass normal HR red tape to flag urgent justice concerns directly to senior leadership.
It gives managers a legitimate, authorized path to advocate for their people.
Without having to go rogue.
Exactly. And that leads into the concept of flexible policy design.
Which means what exactly?
Well, often Robin Hoodism happens because policies are written in a vacuum. They assume every human life fits into a neat, predictable box.
Which it never does.
Never. The paper details Patagonia's approach to employee leave. Instead of rigid, universal rules where a manager has to either enforce a cruel policy or break it to help an employee dealing with a complex family crisis,
Right.
Patagonia grants managers defined discretionary authority. They can approve unique leave arrangements based on documented human need.
That shifts the paradigm from a lack of trust to an abundance of trust.
It really does.
But that brings up an interesting example with Salesforce. Salesforce gives managers a 5 to 10% discretionary recognition budget to use completely at their own judgment.
Yeah, modeled after the famous Ritz-Carlton rule.
Right, where frontline staff are empowered with up to $2,000 to solve any guest problem immediately without asking a supervisor's permission.
It's a great policy.
But I have to ask, doesn't giving a discretionary budget just formalize the Robin Hoodism? Aren't we just saying, here's your rogue fund, go nuts?
I get why it looks like that. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's actually an application of a really powerful organizational concept called subsidiarity.
Subsidiarity.
Yeah.
So subsidiarity is basically saying the person closest to the fire should be the one holding the fire extinguisher,
I love that.
rather than having to email the CEO for permission to pull the pin.
That's exactly the mechanism. You aren't legalizing rule breaking. You are completely rewriting the rules to structurally trust your manager's proximity to the problem.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
But, and this is the vital mechanism that prevents chaos, it only works if you pair subsidiarity with radical transparency and equity monitoring.
So they still have to report it.
Yes, you give the manager the budget and the autonomy, but they have to document exactly why they used it, openly and formally.
Okay.
That data flows back up to leadership, ensuring the discretion doesn't slowly devolve into personal bias or favoritism. The autonomy is real, but the accountability is visible.
The paper also leans heavily into the mechanics of culture and communication, doesn't it?
It's huge.
It points out that a lot of Robin Hoodism is triggered not just by a negative outcome, but by the profoundly disrespectful way that outcome was communicated.
Communication is everything.
Like, a polite no can prevent a rogue action, while a dismissive no almost guarantees one.
It breeds resentment.
The Cleveland Clinic recognized this and actually implemented crucial conversations training for their management.
Which is so smart, because if a manager has to deny a request, say, denying a promotion due to legitimate business reasons, doing it with dignity, empathy, and transparent reasoning, significantly neutralizes the employee's feeling of systemic injustice.
They don't feel like the system is rigged.
Right. The employee might be disappointed, but they don't feel cheated.
Southwest Airlines takes a similar approach, right, by over-explaining decisions.
Yes, they are famous for this.
When leadership makes a tough call that affects the workforce, they don't send a vague one-line email.
Due to budget cuts.
Exactly. They explain the economic trade-offs, the difficult choices, the why. When people understand the mechanics of a decision, they are far less likely to assume malicious intent.
And when companies do inevitably fail because human systems are inherently flawed, right? How they respond publicly is the ultimate test. The paper cites Starbucks in 2018.
Oh, I remember this.
Following a highly publicized, egregious injustice where 2 Black men were wrongfully arrested in a Philadelphia store, Starbucks didn't just quietly settle the issue and sweep it under the rug.
No, they made a massive public move.
They publicly shut down thousands of U.S. stores for an afternoon to conduct racial bias training, and they fundamentally changed their store policies.
Looking at this purely from an organizational mechanics standpoint, it's a monumental example of public, systemic remediation.
It serves a dual purpose. It addresses the immediate harm, but structurally it sends a profound message to every single employee and middle manager in the organization.
What's the message?
It says justice issues will be handled in the light of day at the highest levels of leadership. We will not abandon our moral failures for middle managers to fix in the shadows.
Man. So what does this all mean? When you pull all these threads together, the real revelation of this research is that managerial Robin Hoodism isn't really a story about rogue managers with a savior complex.
Not at all.
It is a vital diagnostic tool.
Yeah.
It is a flashing red light on the dashboard of an organization, screaming to leadership that their formal justice system is failing the actual human beings who operate the machinery.
That diagnostic shift is the ultimate takeaway here.
Right.
Progressive companies need to stop aggressively punishing the symptom and start developing robust ethical infrastructure.
Like what?
Well, look at institutions like the World Bank, which established an integrity vice presidency to independently investigate misconduct and systemic justice issues.
Wow, an entire vice presidency for it.
Yeah. Or Pixar, with their famous Note Stay, which suspends normal operations to create a safe, formalized channel for employees to challenge upward and aggressively critique organizational practices without fear of retaliation.
Incredible.
The ultimate goal of any healthy organization should be to build an environment where a manager never, ever has to choose between their moral compass and their job security.
We started today talking about a Fortune 500 manager in 2019 who risked her entire career to manually tip a broken scale back into balance for a deserving employee.
Yeah, a real turning point for her.
We find comfort in the idea that corporate rules are objective and safe. But sometimes strict adherence to a flawed rule is a moral failure in itself.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over as you navigate your own professional world. We are rapidly entering an era where AI and algorithms are taking over human resources, dictating hiring, compensation, and even layoffs.
It's happening fast.
It really is. So if AI eventually replaces the middle managers who have historically acted as these secret moral shock absorbers, Will Robin Hoodism go extinct?
That's a chilling thought.
And if we completely remove human discretion from the corporate machine, do we finally achieve perfect fairness or just perfect cruelty?
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.